Hello, this is Otsuka from Samurai Administrative Scrivener Corporation. In this video, I would like to talk about the conditions for naturalization applications for foreigners who are married to Japanese citizens. We often receive inquiries about naturalization from foreigners who are married to Japanese citizens or from the Japanese spouses. A common question is, I have gotten married, but when will I be able to apply for naturalization? Now, I will talk about the requirements for naturalization for foreigners who are married to Japanese citizens. In naturalization applications, there are some differences in conditions between general foreigners and those married to Japanese citizens. To conclude, foreigners married to Japanese citizens have slightly relaxed conditions. However, even though the conditions are relaxed, it does not mean that the procedures and document collection become easier. On the contrary, since there is a Japanese husband or wife, you also need to collect documents from the Japanese side. Therefore, I think the number of documents to be collected will be greater than that for single general foreigners. First, let's take a look at the basic requirements for the naturalization application. There are a total of 7. First, the residency requirement. Next, the ability requirement. Then, the livelihood requirement, character requirement, creation requirement, and Japanese language ability requirement, making a total of 7. Now, let's take a closer look at each one in order. Really? Among these 7, there are some conditions that are relaxed for foreigners married to Japanese citizens. However, as mentioned earlier, this does not mean that the procedures themselves have become easier or that the amount of documents to be collected has decreased. Next, let's look at the requirements for foreigners who are married to Japanese citizens. There are 7 requirements, just like before. But among them, the requirements highlighted in yellow are relaxed. Now, I will focus on explaining the 3 requirements highlighted in yellow, along with all 7 requirements. First, let's discuss the residency requirements. The residency requirements refer to whether you have lived in Japan for a specified period. The general residency requirement is that one must have lived in Japan continuously for at least 5 years. However, what about foreigners who are married to Japanese citizens? Being married to a Japanese citizen and having continuously lived in Japan for more than 3 years. Alternatively, there is a residency requirement stating that 3 years must have passed since marrying a Japanese citizen, and that the individual must have lived in Japan for over 1 year. Regarding point 1, for example, if you have lived in Japan as an international student for 3 years, the conditions are met at the time of marriage to a Japanese citizen. There is no need to wait 3 years after getting married. Are you referring to the case of Maru 2? This is an example where a Japanese person is stationed in China, meets and marries a Chinese person locally, and then lives in China for 2 years. In this case, after the assignment ends, if you return to Japan and live there for 1 year, a total of 3 years will have passed since your marriage, 2 years in China and 1 year in Japan. Therefore, the conditions for naturalization will be met. Please note that if you have previously overstayed or engaged in illegal work and have received special residency permission, you cannot apply for naturalization until more than 10 years have passed since the date you received that permission. Next is the ability requirement. The ability requirement refers to whether the individual has reached the age eligible for naturalization. However, I think there aren't many people who get married while still being minors, so I believe you don't need to worry too much about it. Foreigners married to Japanese citizens can apply for naturalization even if they are under 18 years old. Generally, foreigners need to be at least 18 years old. By the way, due to the legal revision in April 2022, the age of adulthood has been lowered from 20 to 18. Yes. Next, let's talk about the ability requirements. What are the ability requirements? It refers to whether one can live without financial difficulties. What about general foreigners? Is it necessary for the applicant to have a stable income? What are the requirements for foreigners married to Japanese citizens regarding character requirements? It means that a new Japanese citizen does not need to be employed, as long as the Japanese spouse has a stable income. This can include the income of the family living together. Moreover, having a stable and continuous income is much more important than the amount of savings. There are often questions like, how much savings is enough? However, the amount of savings, whether large or small, is not very important. What is much more crucial, as I mentioned earlier, is having a stable job and a monthly income. For example, please avoid depositing amounts like 9 million yen or 2 million yen in the bank. Additionally, some people borrow money from parents or relatives and deposit it into their own bank accounts, but it is better not to do this either. You will need to show your bank passbook to the Legal Affairs Bureau during the naturalization application process. So, if there are any unusual deposits, you will need to explain what those deposits are in detail. In other words, it doesn't matter whether your savings are large or small. Yes. Next, I will explain the employment requirements. The character requirement refers to whether an individual is living in accordance with the rules of Japanese society. Broadly speaking, there are two main requirements: properly paying taxes and pension contributions and having no criminal record. First, regarding taxes, for company employees, it is the resident tax. It is necessary for both spouses to make payments individually. It is not acceptable for only one party to make the payment. There are individuals whose resident tax is withheld by their company, and those who must pay it themselves at the municipal office. When you look at your payslip, there is no problem if the resident tax is withheld by the company. There are certainly companies that do not withhold resident tax. Those who work for such companies must pay their taxes themselves. Of course, if you are paying them, there is no problem at all. There are sometimes those who have not paid. If you do not pay this, it will negatively affect your application, so make sure to pay any outstanding amounts, that is, any unpaid dues. It is not good to have unpaid bills, and it is also important to avoid delays in payments. Therefore, it is very important to adhere to deadlines and make payments on time. One important thing to note regarding resident tax is the dependents. Please check your withholding tax statement. For example, if a wife or husband is working part-time, they may be included as dependents to reduce the taxes they have to pay. However, if the income from part-time work exceeds 1.5 million yen per year, you cannot be included as a dependent and receive the spousal deduction. Before 2018, the standard was not 1.5 million yen, but rather 1.03 million yen. Even if you cannot include someone as a dependent, there are times when people mistakenly do so. Including someone as a dependent means that the amount of tax you need to pay is reduced. So in such cases, you need to file a corrected tax return and pay the additional taxes. There are also those who have fishermen in their home country as dependents. Is it acceptable to include parents from the home country as dependents? There are individuals who continue to be dependents even after their parents have passed away. When applying for naturalization, documents from the home country are submitted, so it will be clear when they were lost. In that case, contradictions will arise regarding the dependents, so please be cautious about this. It is also necessary to correct this and make payments retroactively. Business owners and sole proprietors need to ensure that they are properly paying not only personal taxes, but also corporate taxes and other company-related taxes. Next, regarding pensions, is there no problem for those who are enrolled in the welfare pension at their company and have contributions deducted from their salary? I believe there are companies that do not participate in the welfare pension. Such individuals are required to pay into the national pension. There are many foreigners who have not paid at all. those individuals should pay for 2 years. The reason it is for 2 years is that the national pension can only be paid retroactively for the past 2 years. Just like the taxes mentioned earlier, failing to pay them can negatively impact your naturalization application. Therefore, those who have not paid should make sure to settle their payments properly. It's about 16,000 yen per month, so over 2 years it will be approximately 400,000 yen. It is expensive, but since you will be living in Japan as a Japanese citizen, in the future, let's think of it as an investment in your future pension and endure the payments. Additionally, company owners must enroll in the employee's pension insurance as a company. What about companies of a certain size? It is also necessary for the company to pay the employee's pension insurance premiums. Next, it is about having no criminal record, right? To put it simply, it refers to whether or not you have ever been caught by the police. I think the most common issue is traffic violations committed by those who drive cars. It doesn't really concern those who do not have a license, basically. You can see the violation history for the past 5 years. Recently, the standards for flood offense history when applying for naturalization have become stricter. The standard is that there can be up to 2 minor violations in the last 2 years. Minor violations include speeding, not wearing a seatbelt, and parking violations. This means that these lighter versions can be done up to 2 times in the last 2 years. This is the same for special permanent residents. By the way, what happens if you have your license revoked or suspended due to drunk driving or personal injury accidents? First of all, it is difficult for your naturalization application to be approved. There may be individuals who have already committed 3 or more minor violations in the past 2 years. In such cases, special permanent residents must wait 2 years from the date of their 3rd violation, while other general foreigners must wait 3 years before their naturalization application can be approved. Do you think there are few people who have been caught by the police for reasons other than traffic violations? Of course, I believe there are some individuals in that situation. For example, if someone gets caught fighting in the street or shoplifting in a store, however, if they are not convicted after going through court proceedings, I believe it generally won't result in a criminal record. In such cases that are not serious, it often doesn't become a significant issue in most instances. Next, let's discuss the total renunciation requirement. The total renunciation requirement refers to whether one can lose their nationality of their home country after naturalization. Japan does not recognize dual nationality. So, if you acquire Japanese citizenship after naturalization, you will lose your original nationality. Additionally, in some countries, there is a military service obligation, so one must complete their military service. As for whether one can naturalize in another country, it would be best for those from countries with military capabilities to confirm with their home country. Next, let's discuss the ideological requirements. The ideological requirement refers to whether a person holds dangerous thoughts towards Japan. For example, this includes being a terrorist or a member of an organized crime group. I think there are basically no problems. Yes. And next, we have the final point, the Japanese language ability requirement. This refers to whether one can read and write in Japanese. It's not about being able to speak. Fundamentally, it's about reading and writing in Japanese. The level required is equivalent to that of a 3rd grader in Japan. I think having at least a level 3 proficiency in Japanese should not be a problem at all, but there is a Japanese language test during the naturalization application process. What kind of test was it? When I asked the customer, for example, it involved converting hiragana to katakana. It was a test like that. If there are individuals who struggle with reading and writing in Japanese or lack confidence, I recommend studying Japanese in advance before applying for naturalization. How was that? I think there are some of you who currently meet the requirements for naturalization applications, as well as those who may have to wait another 1 or 2 years before being able to apply. If you are considering applying for naturalization, I hope you will take a moment to review the requirements for naturalization and use this information as a reference for your future application. Thank you for watching.